Alright, you guys, I have something fairly exciting. So, if you're watching this video, you're probably here for a villager breeder. But, I'm going to start off with a little bit of history as to what exactly we're doing. As of recording this, we have recently just started Season 3 on our survival world Minerva, and we are looking to trade with villagers, as you probably should be too. And, well, this led me to enter a creative world and start testing some designs because in the past on my channel, I've released some videos on villager breeders and sorters that are no longer functional. I'll put some pictures on the screen now, I suppose, and show you guys, like, what these old designs looked like, and they worked, and they were functional, and they're great, but 1.13 changed a few things. Most notably, the way the villagers pop off to the sides and the way they pop off of rails, that's not exactly the same. And technically speaking, if you use my 1.12 design, that one will sort of work as well. But I feel like this one's a lot more clean. So a little bit of explanation as to how this works is you would want an input right here. So I'll link our villager breeder down below. It's a very fantastic, pretty standard design at this point. That'll feed you plenty of villagers right into this slot. And there's only one little thing I'd like to show you about that. I'm going to switch in right now to show you guys that there's one little tweak you might need to make to that. If you do end up building this design, I would suggest making it like this. So before we dropped the babies into like a little hole and then they swam up, this no longer works. What I found to be a pretty adequate solution was to put them into a cobble fence and then they stand on it, and when they grow up they go over. I know that this is sort of hard to look at if you don't know what's going on, but if you follow the tutorial for that video or a world download, then this shouldn't be too complicated. If anybody wants some further clarification, just let me know in the comments below and I'll be sure to make an update video for that as well. So back to our sorter. Once you have the villager breeder done and they're all funneled to a tube like this, I would recommend a piston setup similar to this. All this does is every single time the minecart passes over it, it'll push the villagers into the corner. This isn't totally necessary to trigger every single time, but it will be necessary because your villagers will sometimes not be in this corner and then they won't be able to get picked up by the minecart. So this will work, and I just want to show these repeaters like so. If you use an observer, it'll work just like this. The one thing I found to be a less annoying solution, because this minecart will be hopping back and forth the entire time, and these pistons I have it turned down way low, but this will get annoying unless you turn down your block sound. So what I would suggest is setting up a tripwire, so every single time a baby is born and they fall down, it'll trigger this. And that's actually a lot closer to when you might need to be triggering it, because like you can see that these guys are getting pushed into place way more than they need to, and that just might be a better alternative. So if you ever want to set up the wiring for yourself, it would look like this. So the actual design works a little something like this. Once you have a villager breeder and you have everything you need, there are certain villagers you want and don't want. Like, we really have nothing we want to do with a shepherd. A librarian with thorns 2 for 26 isn't that good of a deal. Most clerics are pretty bad. They could be pretty niche if you want to, you know, I think you can trade gold. I don't actually remember, but if you want to trade rotten flesh, they're good too. If you need ender pearls, they're good. But, you know, most of these white coats you don't need. Cartographers are mostly useless. Librarians are really mostly what you're looking for. And what the beauty of this design is how clean and easy it is to use. You just take a sword or an axe and you just punch these villagers. You probably might want a beacon. They will take 1 heart of damage from the observer. If you're trading with these villagers, they'll heal up and it won't be a problem. So that's just something that you can consider. But I'm in here in creative just with, you know, strength 255, so I'm just smacking them. And the other beauty of this design is if you... Oops. I am not a villager. Let me out. No. If you want to save one of these villagers, all you have to do is click a button. They will drop underneath, get picked up by a minecart, and they'll go off wherever you need them to be. And that's the coolest part. So we got this timing right pretty well, and I'll get into that in just a second. And I know this looks like a lot. It is. This is way more than we've had in previous designs because before it was a lot easier to just scoop up a villager with a rail. But unfortunately, the easiest automatic way to get a villager out of here is to just, you know, do it the hard way, which is not the easy way, but it's the best we could come up with. And honestly, if you follow the tutorial and or, you know, the world download and figure all this out for yourself, it's going to be a lot easier than doing it by hand because, you know, clicking a button is the easiest possible thing. And I mentioned what I said earlier because this height is like 6 blocks. Yeah, I think they need to fall 6 blocks, and they will most certainly take damage. However, they would take damage from that. However, we've set it up so that the minecart gets ejected right before the villager would actually take any damage, so they can safely be carted off to wherever you need. Of course, in this case, they're just falling down on each other's heads and they're taking damage from that. So, yeah. Basically, the output of this thing will be whatever villager you want to store, and then they'll be at like 19 HP. So, yeah. Where you lead these villagers is completely up to you. One of my all-time favorite standard ideas is something like this. So, this is how we've stored our villagers. This is how I plan to store my villagers, but mainly you would have, like, say, librarians in here with their book trades labeled above. If you find one that you want, you can just manually take the rail, switch it in. There are more automatic solutions to this, but I truly do prefer this. And if you were using this system straight into one of these, they'd move a lot faster than that. But then you can just nudge them into place, break it. This is really not that hard to do in survival. And if you're a legit trader and you're looking for the best trades possible, link below. I have a complete guide to all things villagers if you don't know what those are. If you don't know the lowest book trade for infinity, then you should go watch that video. It should be 5, by the way. Thank you for following Kim.coms. I am streaming while I'm recording this video. I'm sorry for the alerts. So if you're a legit trader who's going to be storing all their best villagers, then let's be real, you're not going to find a perfect villager all that often, or even like that good of villagers. Once you fill in all of these, you're not going to see a whole lot of use out of this. So it being manual isn't really that big of a deal. And that's just about it, you guys. I can get into some of the specifics with this. It's really not too complicated. I had to switch up the rails with being on the same level. We couldn't use a pressure plate anymore, so we had to use a string. And conveniently enough, if you put it on the second level, you won't hit it because the bounding box is blocking you and you should never be looking that high. When they die, they actually pop up a bit sometimes. This one seems to have a missing glass back there. I didn't even know that. They pop up a bit sometimes, and then it hits that, so it nice and safely never has any overlap. And then, of course, this goes into a nice little, you know, it's redstone. I'm not going to explain all this in great detail. I might get into it during the tutorial, which will be starting now. So the area you're going to want to start with is where you're going to want to stand. So I have no idea what your villager area is going to look like. I have no idea where you're going to be facing, what's going to be going on. I'm just going to build the basic design and leave it pretty open-ended for you guys. So if you're building it in this configuration as seen here, it'll be east to west. Cart can be going, you know, east to west, whatever. They will always land on the south side. All right, they will always land on the south side. I tested it in every which way that I could. It'll always be the south side. If you're going north to south, they will always land on the west side. And I can actually demonstrate this over here if I change up my loadout here. If I spawn a villager, you can see that they will always land over here on this west side. And if you know, fake it like that, you can see you'll land on the next one, etc., etc. So if you're building it north-south, make sure that you're, you know, building the wiring towards the east, and then like your interface right over here where the buttons will be is going to be on the west side, and then the south side if you're going east to west. So now that we got your configuration out of the way, what you're going to want to start with is where your villagers are going to land. So I would suggest a basic loadout like this, where they fall down a glass tunnel, and then say if you wanted to build a tripwire hook, maybe right on this third one would be a good one, and then like on the fourth block if I'm old school. Honestly, this is 1.13. I haven't fully tested this, but god, I hope they didn't change anything. You're gonna want a water buffer like this, or if you want to be silly, you can put a slime block down here just to break their fall, because if you're going to build a breeder next to where you store the villagers, you're probably going to want it to be like 50-60 blocks up, and then they can just fall down a pipe. Alright, a little bit of a scenery change, but I figured it would be easiest to show you guys this if I reference one of our older worlds. This was back in 1.8. This is where I traded. You can see the design is a lot simpler back then. This used to work just fine, and it's a similar system to as I... Oh, see, that doesn't work in 1.13. But basically the villagers would come along this line, and I use this exact same system that I showed you earlier. If ever we had a perfect villager, we would just break this and then redirect it, and this worked fine for a long time. But what I wanted to show specifically was this. Yeah, that can happen rarely, but I put the tripwire right above and it breaks their fall, and then the breeder is actually... Oh, I didn't mean to break the tripwire. The breeder is way, way, way up here, safely out of range, and then all the babies would get in this little hole. Like I mentioned, this doesn't work anymore. If you want any more info, I will make an update video. So now that you've got this chute where all of your villagers are going to be in, I'm going to fake spawn some in, just sort of throw them in there, you know, however many villagers you want. I'll try to cut down on the entity count. I have a pretty okay machine, but I'll try to keep it under like 50 to 70 villagers in this test world for when you guys download it and you don't crash your PCs. But if I switch to my redstone loadout here, I'll set up that basic piston array. So basically what you're wanting to do is, no matter what your configuration is, you're going to want one of these. Just be pushing them towards the corner with the rail. It doesn't matter how you do that. Heck, you could put the piston down here. I just said heck. That's a personality change for me. I'm feeling weird. I'm having a crisis here, you guys. You're going to want to break this rail over here and put in a detector rail if you're not going to put the tripwire. And switching back to redstone, just the easy observer setup. You know, we already talked about this. Super simple, not that complicated. Gonna need a couple ticks just so they finish off, and then a couple more ticks back here. And if I test this with a minecart, yeah, it should just push him into the corner. So if I actually push it like this, you know, it'll grab a villager and be off. And that shows another point I forgot. You're gonna want to block there, just so the rail, just so the minecart will bounce back and forth. And then you're going to want to stop it at the end here. I left this as a lever. If you want this to be moving forever, you can put a block of redstone below there or a permanent lever or something. It depends on what you want to do. But for the purpose of this, you're going to want the villagers, you know, going back and forth. Next, you're going to want to start on sort of the area you're going to be working in. So you're going to want a little bit of padding on either side here. This is where the villagers are going to stand, right on these blocks. This is where we're going to stand. We're not going to want to place those. I'm just sort of indicating. I think we can go right into just placing all the glass around here. So you're going to want it to be not like that. My bad. You're going to want to start over the rails and then come around where the villagers are going to be. So if the activator rail is right there, sorry, villager, we can just block it off like so. And in the end, for this example, you should have 5 spots. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then the other villager is going to be right here. And this is sort of where you're going to be interacting with them, is down here. You're going to want a bit of space to walk around in, so I'm going to give you, I don't know, 3 blocks. We're going to have observers in here later, so I'm probably going to have to rip out some of this, but you should have a nice walking area. Again, if you're building it the other direction, this will be on the west side. And then this is your interface. This is where the observers will be. So as I mentioned, this is an example, so you can expand this as long as you want. Personally, for my recommendation and experience, I don't think you need more than 5 or maybe 6 villagers on deck at once. It's not really necessary. It's not going to speed things up either, because the further this thing is, the further this minecart has to travel, and it's been, in my experience, at a comfortable number is about 5 villagers to work with. So it would be my recommendation to stick with that, but you can expand this as long as you want, or if you just want villager to trade with at once, then that could be nice and easy. It depends on what you want to do, but for this example, it'll be 5. And this is a fairly repeatable design here, so you can build as many or as few of these segments as you want. We're going to start off, though, with the segment that actually harvests the villager. So to start off with, you're going to want to, well, I suppose you'd actually want to place the string first. I was going to ignore it, but yeah, you're going to want string in all 5 of the locations where they're going to be. Come up from above, place your observers. This is your output. And then you're going to want wiring for it to connect to, and then, yep. And then this is where it's going to lead into the piston. So you just put dust like so, piston. And then you can just put the redstone blocks on these, although they are going to have to be expanded in a second, because those are going to come down onto here. You're going to have a dust. Then I'm going to wish I didn't get rid of that torch. And then that'll come down onto these blocks, which is where the repeaters will be leading into here. And these have to be on 3 ticks. I'll explain later why. I'll explain why later. All right, I already messed up. What you're actually going to want to do is place quartz slab. Well, okay, it could be any kind of slab, just any kind of, hell, this could be glowstone if you wanted. You just want a block that won't power the pistons below, because that'll come in later. And just like that, you've effectively made the harvesting thing. I know, yeah, it was that easy. If you don't want anything of what I showed you earlier, then all right, so if you just expand it out to all of them like so, you will have a very functioning villager sorter. One thing I did find out that on the return, if it comes back in from my right, they will actually pop out on these back blocks. I sort of forgot about this. So you are going to want to place a layer of glass right here, or, you know, solid blocks or whatever aesthetic you're going for, just to block the villagers from popping off here. If you do that, then it should just, you know, float back and forth harmlessly, and then as you kill the villagers, they should pop off in their respective spots. Alright, so the next bit is the fun part. This is where I'm going to have to turn off this minecart, because villagers are going to be popping out all over the place. This is where we're going to actually drop the villagers down. You're going to want to start by placing the pistons right behind the rails. As you can see, this is where is I'm gonna rip out these because these villagers, you know, shouldn't be here. If you're following the tutorial appropriately, you shouldn't already have, you know, villagers all over the place, unless you already turned it on, in which case, you know, kill the breeder real quick. The default state of these pistons should be like so, where it'll be facing up like this, and then there will be a block below it. Then we're gonna have another piston facing into it like so, and then this is where the observer facing down comes in. So this is actually our trigger. I'm gonna make it a button. And that is very important that it's a stone button. If you want wood, you can do that, but you might have to tinker with some of these timings, because what happens is, and why that repeater needs to be on 3 ticks is, I can better explain it over here. This rail needs to be off so that no villagers pop out into this spot. Because as soon as it's on, they can do that. So all of this timing and delay back here is so that this comes back on as soon as this block is returned. Because if this block isn't here when villagers might go over that rail, they won't have anywhere to go, and then they'll just go on the rails, and then they get, you know, they block the minecart, and then you don't want to have to fix that, believe me. So when you get rid of it, there's just a long delay returning that. So if you want a wooden button, those are actually 1.5 seconds as opposed to 1 second on a stone button. So you will need to add some extra delay here and there. All I suggest is increasing this rail length by 1 and then putting in an extra repeater back here. But if you don't know how to do that, then you don't have to worry about it. Just use a stone button. So you're going to want to have the block that the villagers stand on placed on top of that piston. This piston is going to stay on its own. So past this redstone block, you're going to want to place 2, 3, 4, 5 blocks that you're going to be building with. And then this is going to be really tricky. I hope you didn't build this too low in your end dimension. I would suggest end dimension, but that's just so zombies don't kill your villagers and it's less laggy. Do it like that. It's not actually less laggy, but, you know, if your villagers are in the end, then they're away from everything, because typically a full-scale villager breeder for like a large community server is going to have at least 300, 400, 500 entities all at once at any given time. So it's my recommendation to put it in the end, but of course you can really do whatever you want. It doesn't matter, but you will have to go a little bit lower for this, and this will be as low as you're going. So yeah, just make sure that this powers that piston. For whatever reason it's not, because I forgot that observers don't go that way. And then you're just gonna have 2 like that. So that way, whenever this is updated, it triggers that piston, and that'll actually trigger the dispenser below, and that'll be going right here, and then that'll go down here. Oh, I need a bowl. And then this will go off wherever you want. I'm gonna leave it open-ended like so, because where you go from there is up to you, but you are gonna have to connect these rails like so, and you can easily just fix it. And then you're going to want to make sure that this piston returns back here, because whenever that extends and powers the dispenser, that's what you want. So basically, when this piston retracts, the dispenser will get clicked right away instead of on the return. It'll still work if this block is inverted, but your villager will take damage, and it'll all happen a little bit slower. And then you can power these rails however you want. Continuing off of this, you're going to want 1 more observer right here, and then a brown wool. That alone should be your trapdoor. That should work functionally all on its own. However, as I mentioned, this rail needs to be off. You can see that if there's not a villager detected here, it'll just be there. So you're going to want to take these observers in the back and sort of just trail them upwards. You want an input into this torch right here, and then you can just steal a repeater, 4 ticks on that, and then if I'm not mistaken, that should turn it off. Yeah, there you go. Of course, that turned off in a really weird way, because you'd really never be clicking this button unless there's a village to be harvested. So that string should always be down. So let me just put one into place there. And then you can see now we have a nitwit here. If we wanted to get rid of this guy, we could just click him out of there. And then if there was a minecart in here, he'd be on his way to wherever you're bringing him. And that's pretty much it. So if you want to just do 1 more of these modules, I'll do one with you real quick here. We're going to start from the bottom this time. You just expand this for as long as you want. So I'm just going to make 1 more dispenser down here. I did say that piston's as low as you're going. I sort of forgot about these rails. I hope it's not a big deal. You know, I have to imagine there's going to be 1 guy out there who like followed that to the T, and then like I goofed up, and then he had to rebuild the entire thing 1 block higher, because he had the idea to put this as low to the ground, or as low to the base of the end as possible, and then he's like, yo beast, I can't go into the void, the game caps me there, I can't do anything, why would you do this to me? And then I would feel horrible, honestly, but you know, it's okay. For the rest of us who were patient and was like, yo beast, you're lying to me, that other design, it looked like there was something lower, I know you to be false, but I know you're a good guy and everything, but I don't trust you on this one. Then you might have gotten away with it. You might be okay. But as for the martyr, well, we'll hear about his story another day. Alright, so hopefully during all of that you were actually following what I was doing. It's the same thing. I mean, once you've built one, as long as you got it right, it's really not that complicated. It looks like there's a lot of redstone at first, and there kind of is, but there's really not that much going on. I mean, you've got one trapdoor here. You've got the system up here to indicate that there's a villager in here that locks the cell. And then you've got this wiring out the back just to delay it a little further. And then this observer. Not observer, this is a dispenser. And as for actually fueling the dispenser, there's really nothing complicated here. All you have to do, put a hopper in the back, and if you fill this double chest full of minecarts, it's my experience that you should be good for the rest of eternity. That double chest full of minecarts in each cell especially should be good forever. You should never have any problem. So yeah, that's just my advice. And then of course I need to actually power this rail. So that's about it. If I'm not mistaken, that's just about everything we needed to do. It should be working fine. If you have any troubles or questions, ask me in the comments below. I will be linking our Discord server, the Minerva Discord server. If you ever have any questions about this or any video I make in the future or past, join our Discord. Tag people, people to go to with problems, or the nerds, or I don't know what we're going to change to our Discord in like however long from now, but as of now and as of like the past year, we've had a technical Minecraft section, so you should be able to type in there. If that changed, like I said, just tag anybody. I hope this wasn't too much for you guys. I hope this works out. I hope this helps you sort your villagers and get all the trades. Thank you guys so much for watching, and see you next time.